iRacing Season 4 is a go, and we are here in Week 1 at the Indianapolis Road Course for the IMSA Championship. We have qualified in P3 in the GT3 Ferrari in our first attempt at trying to go for the Division 4 Championship this season. Hopefully you'll join us for the rest of the videos. Make sure you subscribe for them, and make sure you watch this video right to the end, because I have to say, this is one of the craziest races I think I've ever seen on iRacing. So here we are then, waiting for the lights to go green, third on the grid behind the Porsche, directly in front and beside us, and the leader has gone nice and early, as we're going to try and get a decent start. Unfortunately, alongside us, Eric did get a decent one as well, so we weren't able to gain anything off the start line, but we're just going to try and consolidate P3. The leader went a little bit deep there, but unfortunately, no one was able to capitalise, and we're going to come around onto the main straight in P3, exactly where we started. No one got past us, no moves made, but firmly in the slipstream, and we are very, very excited to see where this race is going to go. Now, obviously, very important on the first lap not to make any mistakes. We don't want contact, we definitely don't want damage in this 45-minute race, because it would ruin our race right from the get-go. So taking it extremely easy into turn 1, way below the maximum there. You can see a puff of smoke and a GTP car off on the right-hand side there, in fact, already, not even getting it past the first corner. So just showing the importance of making sure you keep it clean. As you come through here, the car feeling a little bit light on the first lap. The tyre's not quite up to temperature, as you can see on the dash. From all the blue lights on there, they're not up to temperature, not up to pressure yet. So we do need to keep that in mind as we go through this first lap. But it's been pretty decent so far. You can see a decent gap in front and behind. Not pushing too hard at the minute, just trying to get to grips with how this car feels, as this is actually my first ever race around this circuit. Done a lot of practice for this week, but this is the first race we've ever done as we come through the chicane. And this is where things start to get a bit crazy. We get to the exit, we've got two GTP cars crashed. The leader of our class has in fact made contact with one of the GTPs, so we make a position up there. As we come through the banking here, you can see we almost get collected up the rear by the blue GTP car. The Cadillac goes flying in, huge lock up there, somehow avoids both us and the class leader, who is directly in front of us. We've got another GTP trying to recover through the pack. Absolute carnage as the race has started here. As we come around the final corner, we're going to get overtaken around the outside by the Cadillac, who then almost runs into the back of the race leader and has to swerve across. Absolute chaos at the end of this first lap. But we're in P2, we have no damage, we have survived the chaos, and somehow we've put ourselves in a very good position to try and make something out of this race. You can see, going into turn 1, again, still not quite trusting the car. The tyre's still not quite fully up to pressure yet, so we're not going to push too hard. We want to try and maintain the tyre grip, don't want to go too hard too fast, because by the end of the stint, the tyres will definitely be dying off. You see a puff of smoke ahead, another lockup from the GTP. So just showing, with a lot of people with the new cars, the new Porsche, the new Acura, a lot of people are jumping into that LMdH class who maybe don't have the experience. So if you are going to try this combination out this week, please make sure you watch out for that, because there's been an awful lot of chaos, as you're going to see as this race goes on. But we're still in P2, coming into the chicane towards the end of the lap here through the right-hander. Half throttle through there, dab on the brakes, and try and keep it as left as you can, because you want to turn in early, but we have turned in way too early for that corner. You won't be able to see it on this replay. We've actually managed to get ourselves a slowdown, which is slightly annoying this early on in the race. We've got about a second that we have to give back. So you'll be able to hear on the audio, we're lifting off here. We're trying to serve it through the slow twisty bit in the hope that we can try and maintain P2. But to my surprise, as we come into the final corner, we get absolutely dive-bombed by the Porsche there. Couldn't see him, as I only use a triple monitor, and he has managed to sneak up our inside, up into P2, down to P3 now. And as you can see behind us, that is the Porsche that led the race on the first lap before the contact. So we know he's going to be trying to make a move. You can see in the background, just the amount of Porsches in this race was absolutely mental. As we come towards T1, I'm slightly worried we might get dive bombed from behind, so we're going to go to the defensive line. Thankfully, we don't get overtaken. We're still in P3, and we can go about trying to settle our way into this race, which we do just a couple of laps later. You can see we have pulled a gap now to the guy behind. It's a straight fight between myself and the car in front for P2, and the leader is now about 3 or 4 seconds, in fact, up the road. So going very, very well so far for him. Not been too bad for us so far. No mistakes. I think we're still on 0x so far. I know it says 7 on the HUD, but that is not actually correct. So please do ignore that. It's just a little quirk with the RaceLab software. But as you can see, coming through here, we've been overtaken by 3 GTP cars. We go to turn into the corner. No, there's another one. And you're going to see yet another Jota Sport car coming through there. And this was the first time through traffic, and it's absolutely mental. You're going to see another couple of GTP cars flying through. So you've got to make sure, if you are in the GT3 class, that your head is on a swivel, not just focusing on your own race. There's a crash up in front. Is that going to be one of our cars? No, it's another LMDH car off. Must have had a little bit of contact there. And just look at that picture up in front. Somewhere in that is a poor little GT3 car getting absolutely swamped. He had to take a narrow line. Unfortunately, we can't capitalise because we got dive bombed by GTP. So it's absolute carnage. You've really got to keep your head, one eye in your mirrors and one eye in front of you, because you're just not going to be able to focus completely all the time and keep the car on the circuit. It takes incredible brain power to do this for 45 minutes without any sort of contact. And speaking of, we've got another 2 GTPs there off. They've had an accident in the final corner. Not quite sure how they've managed to do that. It's quite a low speed one, but it looks like they're going to be out of the race with a lot of damage. And just look at the amount of time we've lost on that last lap. You can see it in the top left there. We have lost so much time when we've been pretty much on the pace of the guy in front. So this is another thing you have to get used to, is the traffic and the way it ebbs and flows. You will sometimes lose out. Hopefully later on in the race that'll equalise. Maybe the car in front will get a little bit of bad luck and we can close that gap back up. So if you come through turn, I think this is turn 3. It's a very, very tricky corner, this one. Very deceiving, especially in the GT3 car, because it's a long corner. The GT3 cars don't tend to like that with the weight transfer and the balance and braking and turning at the same time. It's a very, very tricky corner, that one. So a lot of people spinning out in practice. So, you know, happy that we've not made a mistake so far through there. I thought we would have done by now. You can see we are starting to close back up to the Porsche in front. It's just got the LMDH for company, and the Porsche is the car just in front of that. So, you know, we've got decent pace. I think we're definitely on for a podium. Maybe a P2 in this one. It might be a little bit of a stretch trying to go for the win, because I think we are still about 4 or 5 seconds off from the race leader. You can see the Acura thinks about going for a dive there on the Porsche in P2. Backs out of it, thankfully, because I think that would have caused a big accident. The Porsche... sorry, not the Porsche. The Acura is really not very good in the low-speed corners compared to the GTEs, but as we come around this final corner, he's trying to go around the outside of the Porsche, and there's contact. The Porsche in P2 is off. He's in the wall. What an absolute disaster for him. Just hit by a GTP trying to go around the outside there. It's really not a place you should try and go, because the GT cars just do not have the grip. They naturally wash out there, so if you're trying to go around the outside in an LMDH, you are playing with fire. We're up to P2 now, though. A lucky break for us there, talking about luck with traffic. And we're up to P2, 3 seconds off the lead. And a few laps later, that gap is down to just over 1. And this is what I was talking about earlier on. Taking it easy on the tyres during the early part of the race. We have been the better part of 3 or 4 tenths of a second per lap for the last 4 or 5 laps quicker than the leader in front of us. We are really starting to gain on him now as we come on to the next lap. You can see you've got a little bit of traffic coming up behind us. Hopefully that shouldn't interfere too much as we come down towards turn 1. I think we've just got enough of a gap to not have to worry about being dive bombed. But as we come here, you can see there's cars coming out of the pit lane. Could cause a distraction for us into the braking zone, but caused a distraction for P1. He's gone straight on. He's off the track. He's on the grass. And that is actually enough to promote us into the lead of the race, but not celebrating for long. A huge hit on the outside there as a GTP went through. I'm not sure what has happened, and we end up just getting swamped here. There's another car going through. So even though the car in P2 ended up on the grass, he's now 3 tenths of a second behind. Have we got a good enough run out the corner? I think we do. And we are going to maintain the lead, but let's have a look back at what happened there, because that was a crazy few seconds gaining the lead and then almost losing it instantly with a bit of contact. You can see in the background, I didn't even realise this, we nearly got dive bombed by a Cadillac as we went into turn 1. Thankfully, he backed out of it. You can see the Porsche there going wide. We go through, and this Cadillac on the outside just loses it a little bit on the exit, hits us on the side there, which forces us wide. Through goes 1 and then 2 LMDH cars, so we can't take our line through there. The Porsche behind can. He does get a decent run off the corner, but thankfully for us, we just had enough of a gap, and that is going to be enough for us to maintain the lead, and we now need to go about trying to break it. We were, like I said, only about 3 tenths of a second ahead. We were gaining, though, through the last couple of laps, like I mentioned, so we need to try and break that toe now, use the pace in the tyres and in the car, because the setup, to be fair, has been absolutely incredible in this race. Once the tyres got up to temperature, I really felt like the quickest car in the class. As you can see there, the Porsche behind us actually got dive bombed by GTP. That broke the toe, thankfully for us. And by the end of the stint, you can see the fuel warning light is on and the gap is up to 2.5 seconds. An incredible job by us in this stint to not only catch that 3-second gap, we set the fastest lap of our race, last lap around a 24.8. And the gap, like I said, is up to 2.5 seconds. So a great drive so far in what has been a manic, mental race. Crashes galore, mistakes from other people, and coming into the pits, nearly a mistake from me, as I hadn't actually practiced the pit entry. As you can see, we're taking way less speed than we could do through there. We nearly messed up the entry, in fact. We do technically speed into the pits there, but I think we slowed down enough to not give ourselves a penalty. And you can see we've lost a fair bit of time behind us. However, this is where the race started to go downhill. We come into the pits, we hit our marks, a nice little pit stop there. You can see there is the Porsche who was in P2 behind. And let's see if you can realise what I've done. As we're sitting here, we're waiting for the fuel to go in. You know, just waiting for the car to be allowed to go. And all of a sudden, the Porsche in front of us leaves. And we're still in the pits. And we're still in the pits. And we're still in the pits. And only now are we getting released. And we have lost 9 seconds in the pits to Daniel, sorry, not Daniel, Eric, who was behind us. Have you worked out what we did? Yeah, I forgot to tick the auto fuel, which meant that instead of taking the 20 or 30 litres we actually need to do the 15 minutes left in this race, I put a full tank of fuel in. Massive mistake on my part. Definitely not one I'm going to be doing again, but yeah, that has cost us absolutely massively. The chance for the win is essentially gone now. We're not going to be able to gain 7 seconds in the space of about 15 minutes. That's probably about 10 laps in these cars, and we're not going to be about a second a lap quicker. So the race win is gone. P3 is actually right behind us, and you can see as we carry on, we're not able to pull away. We had the pace early on, but with all this fuel on board that we just don't need, we are so much slower than we should be. We're at only a 1/10 of a second ahead of P2. We've been in a real battle with him for the last 3 or 4 laps now. You know, we're struggling to break away. We need a lucky break, and as we come into the next corner, you can see we turn out there, and then all of a sudden the car rotates on us. What has happened there? We get a massive hit. The bodywork is off. What has just happened there? Have we lost it under braking, or did something else happen? Let's take a look at the replay. As you can see, here we are just ahead of the Porsche. There's a blue GTP. Surely we've not had an incident with that. Well, as you see, coming into the corner, he throws it in, locks up, and just completely takes us out. The Porsche, thankfully, does right us, but we have taken a little bit of damage. How much damage, you ask? Well, yeah, the entire front end is missing, so it's not ideal. Definitely not what you want when you're trying to race. And yeah, this is sort of the start of the downfall. We've gone from battling for a potential lead of the race. We tried to turn in, get dived on by another GTP, so we managed to avoid that one at least. But we've gone from battling for the win earlier on to now only just on the podium, because just behind us, in fact, is 4th place. So we might not even get a podium in this race now, which was, I'll be honest, absolutely infuriating at this moment, because that move was nothing to do with me. Wasn't my fault. Just a GTP being overambitious, locked the brakes up and went straight into us, and didn't even get an apology for it. So, you know, typical LMDH things. And we are now in a battle for our lives against the car behind to try and stay on the podium. And let me tell you, in a car that has way too much fuel in and no front end, this thing was an absolute dog to try and drive. We had to try and adjust on the fly because the front end was non-existent. We've got, I think at this point, we had about 5 minutes or so left. And the car just felt awful. So we are going to be hanging on by an absolute thread here, trying to make sure we focus on the exits, get the speed out of the corners, so we can't be close enough to the car behind for a lunge. And yeah, you can just see we're being really tentative with the turning, not trusting the front end at all, because it's just going to wash, or we just get snaps of oversteer randomly. It's really not fun. You can see clattering over that curb there. You don't want to do that, because it does actually cost you straight line momentum. But we just couldn't get the car to turn. And, you know, I'm really worrying at this point. We have managed to keep P3 at the moment, but he's right behind us. 0.3 of a second. He's no gap at all. So one mistake from us, and he's going to send it, absolutely no doubt. Keep an eye on the gap as we come into here. Goes down to about 0.2 of a second. I think he tried to send it up the inside there. As you can see, we gain about 1/10 of a second on the exit. So, you know, we're definitely under pressure here. We've weathered the initial storm, though. That's, I think, where we're going to be at our most vulnerable. And now it's just about getting into a rhythm, getting used to the damage. Like I said, the entire front end, the front diffuser, all of it is gone. So we're going to be struggling for grip. We're going to be struggling for tyre wear. You can see there, the car just wouldn't turn in. to that corner. I tried to turn the car in, and the rear end wanted to go because there wasn't enough downforce. Yeah, it was just a very strange car to drive, but we did manage to weather the storm. We get right towards the end of the race now. I believe at this point we are only about 2 laps away from the race finish. You can see the gap behind still under a second, so we still cannot afford to make any mistakes as all these GTP cars come absolutely flying past us down towards turn 1. We're spotting the braking though. We're actually catching, bizarrely, back up to P2. I'm not quite sure how we were managing to do this with the amount of damage we had. But we're just, we're trying to catch P2, but keeping an eye behind us. And speaking of behind, look at the delta in the bottom left. Something has happened to the car behind going through that corner. Let's take a look at what's happened, because he is miles behind us now. Just have a look. You're going to have to look at the right-hand side of your screen here. It looks like the GTP just makes contact there, spins the Porsche off, and that has thankfully saved us in this race. We've got no pressure from behind now. I think the gap was about 6, 7, 8 seconds. And we can try and focus on trying to catch that green car just up in front. We do bring the gap down, but unfortunately not enough. But it is going to be a podium as our first attempt in a battered and bruised Ferrari, showing just what an incredible car this is. And if you need any more proof of that, you should definitely check out the video that is on your screen now.